Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we were mourning the fact that we didn't have access to Twitches, and let's fix that. We now have access to Twitches. Perfect. So what we want to do now is we want to hop into the VAB, and I want to replace those thuds that we had with Twitches. That will be probably significantly better and significantly louder, so there's that. So we're going to need to, this is the autosave variant. Hang on a moment. This is the actual variant here. Okay, so I'm going to drop these studs, and we're going to replace those with Twitches. And the question is, what are we going to be looking at for thrust to weight here? Also, I want to move this thing to be a little bit more centered. There we go. That'll be better. So with that in mind, let's take a look at these engines here. So if we have a Twitch here, and we angle that to go down, there we go. And then a Twitch here, angled down. And then we do the same thing over on this side with a Twitch angled down and a Twitch angled down. The question is, how much thrust is that? Okay, so that's this engine and then these four engines here. The answer is it's difficult to say, actually, because of the existence of this engine. That is difficult to say. I am not sure if this will be enough thrust, and I don't know that we can find out without just running a test. So I think we're going to need to do that. Let's save this. Let's put this out on the pad. These Twitches are going to be a lot more visually appealing, and they're going to be a lot less space and a lot less mass. What they aren't, however, is more thrust, I don't think. I'm pretty sure thuds are more thrust than a Twitch. I'm like 95% certain about that. So let's put this out on the pad, and we are, of course, going to put this into a minimum orbit above Duna. So, sure, a semi-major axis of 1 will work. That's absolutely fine, because that'll just put us at the minimum safe. So that seems okay, and then we're going to be in this position. We know that we want to warp around to here, so we'll do that. And then we're going to be going to horizontal velocity minus. And we want to hold attitude there as best we can. So we know that we want to finish this warp, and then once the warp is done, we want to get into position for horizontal velocity minus, clear our input blocker, because we don't actually care about testing the communications net just yet. We're just testing delivery at this point. So we're very, very close here. No doubt about that. So what we want to do at this point is just light up this engine and fully burn it out. But we want to make sure that we do not have crossfeed enabled here. Okay. Looking good. Excellent. So now we just want to get rid of as much of this speed as we can. So just burn out all of that remaining fuel. There we go. And if I recall correctly, we ended up wanting to move the fuel out over here previously. We'll see if that still remains a thing. I'm not going to do that immediately, but... oh, hang on. I want to shut down this engine now. And then I'm going to activate our next stage. There we go. So this is still probably too much fuel here, and that's absolutely understood. But for the moment, let's just bring ourselves right on down. Okay, I want to extend out this action group, although this is still only at 0.4. And default doesn't move it back. So we need to investigate that. That's definitely something I need to look into. But for right now, we're just going to see how this goes with these guys. So what is this thrust to weight going to look like? 0.97? Well, that might actually be enough. Okay, so we're just physics warping down here. And as soon as we get low enough, we should be able to see our aerodynamics here. Aerodynamics is looking good thus far. But if I recall correctly, it was when the chutes deployed that we had an issue with being pulled too much. Okay, we're nosing down here. That's understood. Chute deployment should happen now. There we go. That'll slow us down considerably. Main chutes are out. and that pulls us way too much around this way into a vertical orientation. Yeah. So we just moved all of this fuel up over here, and we enable crossfeed. And that mass shifting, actually, this is actually getting into position without it. Let's move it back and see what happens here. Okay, so that was the momentum from the fuel shifting. We're not quite where we want to be here. So we do need to have some fuel transferred over. You were supposed to have stopped. Okay. Something like this puts us in a more balanced position. So you can see we're coming down at 24.6 meters per second. This is not ideal speed, but the question is, how much will we slow down if we burn? We're picking up a roll as we burn. That's unexpected to roll. That's quite unexpected, actually. So that's definitely slowing us down a lot. No doubt about that. But it's not quite enough. So we need a couple of things here. First off, let's pull this back to the vehicle assembly. We can throw in additional twitches to compensate for that. It slowed us down a lot, but what we really need, I think, is we really need to figure out what's going on here with this custom 01 target extension here. So incremental control or absolute control. Keyboard control will move the field to minimum to maximum instantly. This was on incremental control to start with, although these are on absolute control. Okay, so that's interesting. There's apparently a keyboard action mapped to that. Let's go ahead and put this out on the pad for now and see if we can figure out what that means. That's an important question right now. Now, we could do this manually, and that's how I've done it in the past, but learning how these action groups actually work will be very useful eventually, so that's absolutely a thing that we want to get done. So for the time being, let's just hop on out to the pad here. Okay, so if we go into set 1, I was just checking to see if holding the button changed anything, and it doesn't. Okay, so if we switch these to absolute control, which is what they're at here. Yeah, that doesn't do anything at all. So we need to figure out how to set the actual distance there, right? Also, I'm still a little confused about why we picked up a roll there when we activated those engines. That's very odd. I would not have expected that. I'm going to put another batch of twitches, one here, and then one over on this side, right about here, like that. And I don't necessarily think that will fix the roll, but it will definitely help our thrust a little bit. I'm wondering about the center of thrust compared to the center of mass. Let's thrust limit this down to 0. And then we'll look at our center of thrust. Yeah, that looks good. And then center of mass. So we can see here that the center of mass is a little bit this way, and the center of thrust is a little bit this way. Now, we know that by default, we like to sit at a bit of an angle. So I'm not sure if this is the correct direction to compensate for that angle, or if we need it to be a little bit on the other side of the center of mass. But either way, this is probably fine. And then if we unthrust limit this, you can see that it's trying to move in that poodle at the same time. So that's good. If we're up over Duna, we can now see that we have a thrust to weight of 1.67 here. And this should be plenty of thrust to give us a braking burn. So that's not an issue at all. Now the issue that we need to solve here, well, there's that rolling, and there's the potential of having some thrust offset issues here. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But what I really want to figure out is what we've got going on here. So this is the input response speed, which is fine. We can have this be at like 20% per second, which it doesn't really feel like this does anything, for the record. It seemed like it was not, in fact, responding at 1% per second, although maybe it was, and that just made it very difficult to see, but it immediately jumped to a particular point, right? So if we click on this, left or right click, it will delete it. So selecting this, we can see that that is giving us the options for all of this. But this set will override the control setup in the default group. I don't really know what that means, so that's good to know. And we do have, I think, a keybind that goes to these. So it might be because this is set up in an axis group, actually. I'm noticing here that this is an axis group in all of this. So let's get rid of everything that's in here. And we're just going to completely ditch this axis group. This does not want to delete these. It's because we're in set 1. We need to go into the default. There we go. So we're not going to override the default on set 1 here. I believe that the issue here is that this is trying to map it to a keybind, which isn't actually what I want to do. So what we want to do then is in this group, okay, reset to build extension in default. That seems about right. Okay, so reset to build extension here. This is what we want. So this is going to, on default, it's going to retract it back to this point, right? That's the idea here then. And then in set 1, what we would need to do is we would need to extend piston. Does this extend it all the way, or I'm not seeing any... Okay, I'm not seeing any ability to modify how much it extends the piston. So this might just extend it all the way, which is actually what we want. So if that's the case, that's great. And we know that it's going to, you know, cause some issues, but that's fine. Okay, so that should, in theory, do what we want, and we'll test that just out on the pad here. It's going to cause some wheels to go boom. That's okay. All we really need to do is we need to test to see that the piston extension is working correctly. Because we were only at 40% piston extension before, and those will act as kind of shock absorbers. The wheels might go boom on landing, but in theory they won't because we'll be landing slowly enough. But then we need to think about our thrust offset here. And this is going to have to be slightly bespoke for each one of these components. The core thing to realize is we're only doing this once. We're going to build future components on the surface. So we're only going to have to deliver this once. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So action groups here, if we go into set 1, that now does nothing. Okay. Interesting. So that action group doesn't seem to be available. Let's bring this back to the vehicle assembly building. I've never worked with action groups before, but once we get this figured out, this will be a significant boon to us. So we are in here. Ah, okay. So this only appears when we have a part selected. It doesn't appear here. That's interesting. So this is these are the axis groups down here, and that gave us that custom 01. But now here, with this selected, we have custom 01, and then we have these group actions which don't appear to have saved. Nope. Wait, it's here. Okay. So that's fine. I don't actually want to override default. So what we want to do here is reset to build extension and extend piston. So now we just need to figure out, with this here, how do we actually activate that? So it doesn't seem to be through the same action group tooling as the other one, which kind of makes sense because there's a different number of custom action groups. So is that something that we can access through the part is something that I'm wondering right now. Or is that a keybind that we have to get to? We'll figure this out in a moment. Okay, so at this point, let's see here. Reset to build extension here, which is fine. Its extension at build is 0. So then if we come in here, we've got the default set 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we'd expect. If we edit these action groups and select this guy, now this would appear in custom 0, 1. What happens if we check that box? Okay, that doesn't do anything. That's noted. And I don't see an option in the part itself. So, how do we actually activate this action group? That's interesting. Does it have to be, like, through the staging? That would be kind of weird, right? That'd be a weird way to do it. I'm actually surprised that I'm having this much trouble with it. I think there's probably a keybind for it, is my guess. So if we go back to vehicle assembly, I think if we go properly to the Space Center, we can look at the keybinds without having to go all the way back to the main menu. So let's hop out of here for now. This is wildly out of center, but whatever. Okay, so this is fine for the moment. We're very close to being able to deliver this thing to the surface from low orbit. We're just going to have to, of course, be in a position to deliver it to orbit, right? So if we go into the settings here, no, we would have to go all the way back to the main menu in order to look at the keybinds. Okay, that's, you know, not necessarily ideal. But I guess we'll do it. I'm going to quick save here. And we're going to go to the menu, and I will be right back once we've figured this out. Okay, so here we are back in the save that we just made, theoretically. And according to the keybinding list, the keybinding is 1 to activate action group 1. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So in that case, the question is, how do we deactivate action group 1? Well, let's just go ahead and reopen this. We, in theory, don't ever need to deactivate it, actually. So let's just hit 1 and see what happens, and then we're going to hit 1 again and see what happens. Now, this is going to cause explosions, almost certainly, and we're going to need to test the layout of our engines here. So that is definitely something we're going to want to do here in a moment. But first, we're going to need to do this, and then we're going to need to revert to launch almost certainly because it's going to blow up some of our wheels. That's understood. Okay, let's see how this goes. That did not go well. Okay, well, I'm going to have to do further research on that. For now, we're just going to need to set this into orbit around Duna, and we're going to bring this down again. I want to test the engine orientation and how slow we can get this. It would also be nice if we could come down on something that wasn't a cliff face. We keep coming down on cliff faces, which is definitely not ideal for our landing here. So let's get this into position, and we're going to need to clear our input blocker, of course. So we'll just bring this on around, and I'm going to turn on physics warp right away here. Okay, and we're just going to get ourselves oriented about like that. And let's fire up this engine, although we want to not be having crossfeed. Okay, there we go. So we'll burn out this remaining fuel, what little fuel is in this tank, and that's fine. We burned a little bit out of this one, but I'm not terribly concerned about that. Okay, so that seems fine for right now, and we're just going to start going down. Now, of course, we need to enable crossfeed. We need to shut down this engine, and then I'm going to move some fuel into this tank. I'm actually going to move all of it, I think, into this tank, just for weight distribution purposes, since that's apparently a thing, which kind of surprises me. But let's bring this right on down. Hopefully we're landing, like, here this time. That would be useful. Instead of, like, here. Okay, so we definitely want to activate all of this. There we go. So that's everything activated here. Now, I'm noting that some of these twitches are not showing as having fuel. That's odd. Okay. So here's drogues out. And mains should be following shortly. There we go. Mains are now out. That pulls us up. Not quite as up as before. And overall, that looks good. Yes, that looks quite good there. So let's do a quick test fire here. Okay, so we've got some flame out on some of this. Enable crossfeed. That's the issue. Okay, there we go. Still did not get any fire out over here. Enable crossfeed. Hang on. These both need to be set to enabled. There we go. So I can see right now it looks like we've got some thrust offset issues. It wants to kick this end up. And we can compensate for that by moving this fuel back over here, actually. So if we do that, how much is that going to cause us to drift? Well, it's going to do this, but that's maybe okay. And the reason why is because we know that it wants to kick this end up as we land. See? Okay, now it's doing the opposite. Well, that's exciting. Okay, let's let this get to a position around here. I don't really care too much about the roll that we're picking up in theory, although really this is more of a yaw. Yeah, there's definitely a weight distribution issue here, and we could simply try to balance the weight a little bit. By doing something kind of like that. You can see we're moving at about 18 meters per second right now, and that's understood. We're going to want to cushion this landing, of course, and I'd love to have these be extended, but that's kind of broken right now. Let's get these as extended as we can, and I'm just going to do a minor burn to slow us down a little bit. Okay, so those are manually extended right now. Well, it wasn't a perfect landing. That's for sure. But it kind of worked. All of the important parts are here. Sure, we lost this tank. These engines are rolling away. This engine is gone. That's understood. And apparently these struts are gone too. But I think the struts were connected to the tank directly. So that makes sense. But that's definitely a bit of an issue there. We could just jettison off the tank here and have this be connected to the batteries directly. That's a theoretical option, but that proved that this is at least semi-viable. Okay, I'm turning off the brakes, and we can see we're creeping off over this direction. We are surprisingly almost able to turn here. Okay, so let's build up a little bit of speed here. I'm wondering about our current electric charge. So this is definitely eating up a lot of electric charge. That's noted. Okay, so turning is a bit of an adventure. But overall, this actually kind of works. It's a bit fiddly to steer, and I'm wondering about going uphill with it. I have a feeling that might be a little spicy. Energy is at a bit of a premium as we're maneuvering around, but we can always take our time with that. That's not that big of a deal. So this kind of worked. It's not perfect, that's for sure. It needs a little bit more tuning on a couple of factors, Factor one being that the weight distribution is very janky. And with the weight distribution being very janky, that of course means that the center of thrust is very janky, right? So that's absolutely a concern. We can turn like 45 degrees at a time or so. We've burned about 20% of our battery from what we've done here. But overall, I'm quite convinced by this. This is going to work. It definitely needs a little bit more in terms of things, just in general. No doubt about that. But it can coast for a while. We can just crank on the brakes. And with the brakes on, we can bring ourselves to a halt. It's not the fastest halt in the world, but that's fine. We've also still got some fuel here. It'd be kind of awkward, but we can do stuff with that fuel. So that is definitely noted. So that's very interesting. No doubt about that. I'm going to call that our first simulated successful landing of this thing. Yeah, we lost a wheel up over here. To be honest, I didn't even notice that we lost a wheel as we were moving around there. And this not being connected is certainly a bit of an issue. So we can revert that back. We could add another set of wheels back on the tank back here. So what we could do there, and that's probably not a bad idea, what we could do there is we can move this twitch up slightly and this twitch up slightly, or back over here if we wanted to change the center of mass on that a little bit more. And then we could just slot in a set of wheels right here and right here. And these are likely going to be deleted later on, right? So they would go approximately there, and they would likely be removed after installation. And the idea behind that is just to prevent this from exploding, having some sort of shock absorber there. So that seems fine. I need to do research on the action groups, and we definitely need to do something about the center of mass versus center of thrust. This is absolutely a problem, having the center of thrust be here and the center of mass be here. So that is absolutely a concern, but we need to remember that by the time we do this, this fuel is gone. So this is very close at this point. That's interesting. It's very close at that point. Huh. Well, we can definitely mess with that a little bit and try to tune this in. We're trying to perfect the technique right now so that we can do this much more easily with our other modules, which, to be clear, our other modules, they're going to need some semi-bespoke solutions, so that's absolutely understood. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.